Hey guys, what's up? I'm about to watch this Loranity video because I'm gonna start coming back to Guild Wars 2 slowly over the next couple of days. So I thought that I would sort of get a list going of things that I want to do as I get back in, post level 80 content, doing all these different things. So I thought the Loranity's video would be a really good one to watch. So they're gonna be on the Discord, so let's get into it.
What should I do in Guild Wars 2 after I hit
What should
level
I do,
80?
Loranity?
This is
Tell me.
another extremely common question I get asked in my stream chats. Guild Wars 2 is a gigantic game, so a lot of players get a bit overwhelmed once they hit max level.
I think it's like the opposite of the problem that you have with World of Warcraft, where you get to the end and you go, I don't even see anything to do. And then in Guild Wars 2, you're like, oh, I see so much stuff to do that it feels impossible to get onto it.
What content is there even to do now that I'm level 80, and what content should I do first? Well,
So much
obviously,
content.
the first thing you should do is subscribe to my YouTube channel. Fortunately, I am on a quest to definitively answer all common Guild Wars 2 questions.
Good for you.
And today, we are talking about what you should do after hitting level 80. There are loads of ways to play Guild Wars 2. You can be a tryhard raider, a fashionista, an open world enjoyer, a PvP main, or even a musician. You can absolutely decide to focus on just one game mode and ignore the others, if you want to. There is no wrong way to play this game. However, there are a couple of things which are quite useful for anyone to do right after they hit level 80. Let's start off with those. After you hit level 80...
You know, I think it's kind of interesting. She said there's no wrong way to play this game, and I like heavily agree with her. I have this sort of... Sorry, I have this sort of thing. I just saw a conference on video about MapleStory down the related videos. I have this sort of thing about MMOs that's been kicking around in my head over the past couple of days, and I thought maybe I'd get your guys' opinion on it. I don't really know what constitutes as completing everything, because there's so much stuff going on inside of these games that the majority of people will never do all of it. Even the people who are like the most hardcore raiders and really pride themselves on doing absolutely everything inside of a game, or like, you know, being good at the game, like getting GUD at the game. I don't think that they're actually the type of people who are going to go through and do all the pet battles and all the side quests and all of the little things. You know, they're not going to go around and collect all the cute outfits and do all of that. Like, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe there are a lot of people who sort of fall into that bucket. But to you guys, what is it that makes you feel like somebody is like a vet in an MMO, and especially at Guild Wars 2? Like, what do you guys think that is?
80, you probably want to work on unlocking your movement tools. This stuff will let you get around more easily, so you won't constantly be falling behind your friends. Gliding was added by the Heart of Thorns expansion, and it lets you slowly glide down after you jump.
I did not recognize that animation.
This lets you reach new places, and it also lets you survive falls from very high up. If you are clumsy like me and you fall off a cliff every 5 seconds, you will love having access to gliding.
Yeah, it's good.
It is super useful, and you'll definitely want to unlock this ASAP. Guild Wars 2's Powerful Fire expansion also added loads of different mounts, which all have different movement abilities. For example, the Raptor lets you jump far and cross gaps, and the Springer lets you jump up super high. With gliding and mounts unlocked, you'll be able to traverse Tyria much easier. For any fresh level 80, I recommend playing for the start of the Heart of Thorns story for gliding,
that's what I'm doing currently.
and then also for the Power of Fire story for your first couple of basic mounts. Playing for the End of Dragons expansion is also an option to get gliding and the first 2 mounts unlocked, but you won't be able to upgrade those with mastery levels. If you don't know what mastery levels are just yet, don't worry, we'll talk about those in just a bit, but for now I recommend...
Mastery levels are the thing that most confuse me about when I should focus on them, I think. Because there are definitely some masteries that I think are really, really interesting. Although somebody pointed out to me the other day that instead of going and getting auto loot as my first mastery, like really pushing hard to go through core Tyria and get auto loot as the level 5 mastery, that instead you can just keybind W as being W plus F, and A as being A plus F, and D as being D plus F, and S as being S plus F, and then you just have auto loot turned on every single time you try to move around. And I was like, that's genius.
Getting your gliding and mounts in Heart of Thorns and Powerful Fire, respectively. While you can skip through the story and work on unlocking gliding and mounts instantly, my personal recommendation is to just play for the game's story from start to finish. This will give you a fantastic sense of direction when you're not sure what to do, and you will unlock a lot of useful stuff like gliding and mounts along the way. If you're feeling a bit bored of the base game story right now, do not worry. In my opinion, Guild Wars 2's story gets better and better as you progress through.
I can
The
definitely
base
see that.
game
That's a lot of
story
MMOs.
is, in my opinion, by far the weakest chapter. If you're a bit bored of it, and if you really just want to get to the good stuff, you can also decide to skip finishing the personal story for now and hop straight to another chapter. Guild Wars 2's story structure is unfortunately a little bit complicated. The story consists of the base game, expansions, and also living worlds.
Yeah.
Living worlds was
in between
basically
patches.
story patches in between the expansions.
Yeah.
However, if you didn't get the Elder Dragon Saga Complete Collection, you will have to buy most Living World seasons separately.
Yeah.
Because of this, a lot of people decide to skip Living Worlds. If you are a true story fan, I do recommend grabbing all Living World seasons and then playing through everything chronologically. But if you don't care about story that much, you can also decide to skip Living Worlds for now and to just start with the expansion story.
I think that so I've been sort of tossing this around in my head over the past couple of weeks. I've been thinking to myself of like, why do I really not get into MMO storylines? Why do they not click inside of my brain super well as being a thing that feels like you're actually having this real big full experience every time that you go through an MMO story? And I think I've sort of come to a conclusion. I think I've come to it just now, so this is fresh off the dome. But when you're playing a game like Morrowind or Oblivion or something like that, a lot of times you'll get on a quest and you'll be following that quest line all the way through and you'll be experiencing everything that it has to offer as you're moving further and further into it. In an MMO, there are so many things distracting you from the quest line that you're doing that unless you just commit really hard to doing only the storyline, then you are going to have a hard time staying locked into what's happening, and then your mind is constantly being pulled in a whole bunch of different directions, so it's a lot harder to actually pay attention to what's going on because of just the nature of what's happening. You know, there's a world boss coming up soon, and oh, I'm in the middle of this story quest, I need to hurry up and get through the story quest so I can do that world boss that I'm trying to do, or oh, you know, my friends are doing this dungeon and I want to go do that dungeon with them, so I need to hurry up and finish this quest, or I don't actually have time to do the next part of this quest, so I'm going to wait to do this until later, and then you sort of get distracted from it, and you come back later. And I think that sort of like makes it really difficult for me to key in, because when I'm looking at all of these locations inside of the videos that she's showing in the background here, I really like want to experience this story. It reminds me of Elder Scrolls. It reminds me of Outward. It reminds me of Final Fantasy 12. It reminds me of all of these games that I'm really, really love and love the storylines in them, and it makes me want to go and experience the storyline here, but I don't know why it doesn't click in for me, and it has to be something like that. I mean, I'm just like grasping at straws for why that could be, but that it feels like more of a chore to do the story in an MMO than it does in a game where like it's just a straight RPG, and I think that it might have something to do with the multiplayer aspect of it.
You will be missing some context by doing that, but the story will still be pretty easy to follow. Alright, so what was that about upgrading your glider and mounts? Well, starting with the first expansion, there are masteries for you to level. You train masteries by filling the masteries XP bar, and then once that's done, spending a mastery point.
On them.
You can, for example, start unlocking masteries for your glider, allowing you to use updrafts or glide infinitely. You can unlock raptor masteries to make your raptor jump further.
The game looks so much better later on. It's so frustrating because I want to be in this. I want to be in the really nice looking zones that are absolutely beautiful and have all these cool things going. This looks like a Zelda game. This looks like Skyrim. This looks like a place that I want to go. This looks like God of War Ragnarok. Like, I want to be in here and experience this. And it sucks so much in an MMO where the gameplay that you start out in is from 10 plus years ago, and everything, when I say dated, I don't mean it looks bad. Guild Wars 2 Quarteria still looks like a good place to be, but this looks cooler. And it sucks when you see a whole bunch of footage of stuff like this and you just want to go and experience all of that and you can't yet. Well, you can, but you know, people be mad.
Or Springer masteries to make your Springer jump higher. Going for masteries is another fantastic early game goal to go for, and it's pretty easy to level up a lot of these while you're running around the walls doing the story. While you're busy playing the expansions, this is also the perfect time for you to start unlocking your elite specializations. The first 3 expansions each added an elite specialization for every class, and those elite specializations drastically changed how your class plays. An elementalist can, for example, specialize as a Tempest, a Weaver, or a Catalyst.
Yeah.
These elite specializations are super strong, and really, now that you are level 80, you will want to start working on unlocking them all. If you're not quite sure which elite specialization you want to play, I actually did a class guide video very recently, where I discussed all elite specializations in the game. So if
Dude,
you're curious,
it's so hard
maybe give
to
that one a
talk
watch.
about the way that the characters actually feel inside of an MMO, though. I appreciate all these guides, and they've definitely made me see a whole bunch of classes that I would like to play and I'm interested in playing. But man, it is so difficult to pick what it is that you want to do because you have no idea how it's going to feel when you're 1,000 hours in. And once you've gotten 1,000 hours in, it's almost like it's not too late to switch to something else, obviously, but like it's definitely too late for you to get that first 1,000 hours back on something.
You unlock an elite specialization in the same way that you have been unlocking skills and traits so far. You spend hero points
sword
in the
looks so cool,
training menu. However, you will notice that these
Harbinger
elite
looks cool, too.
specializations cost a lot of hero points. They might seem almost impossible to unlock
Now you get
at
10
first.
from each one of the expansion.
Now, before you go spend 30 hours grabbing hero points, here is some useful info. Hero point challenges in the expansion maps don't give you just 1 hero points. No, instead they will give you 10 hero points. So, to get enough points for your elite specs, you will want to do hero point challenges in the expansion maps instead. Some Heart of Thorns hero point challenges can be quite challenging as a solo player. They're honestly kind of mean. This one evil mushroom has easily killed thousands of new players. If you're struggling with these, make sure to ask for help in the
I almost want to make a new character. And I mean, I have a new character. I have a thief that I've been playing. I almost want to go on my thief, and I want to go back and start doing the living world stuff and stream that. And then I almost want to do all of the Heart of Thorns stuff like offline so that I can experience it by myself. I don't know. It's a really difficult thing. Maybe I'll go back on another character. I don't know. We'll have to figure out what
map
happens.
chats or check out the LFG. Players often organize hero point trains, where they go and look all the hero points together with a large group of players. If you join one of these trains, getting your hero points will be super easy. Just follow the commander and start hitting stuff. Fortunately, hero point challenges in Path of Fire and End of Dragons are quite a bit easier, and you should be able to solo most of those. Another thing that I highly recommend you work on now that you are level 80 is your gear. Having a full set of good level 80 gear will make the whole game
totally.
a lot easier. You might even stand a chance against that mean mushroom from Heart of Thorns. It's also just kind of a fun goal to work towards.
Dang, her character
Guild
looks
Wars
so
2
cool.
doesn't add new gear tiers with expansions and patches, which means that good gear will be good gear forever. In other words, getting some good gear right now is a fantastic investment, and it will last you pretty much forever. As a new player, you will first want to work on getting yourself a set of level 80 exotic gear. Exotic gear is not quite the highest gear tier, but it is pretty close. The next gear tier is Ascended gear. It is very much worth working
something I
towards
don't
an
know much
Ascended
about.
weapon and Ascended trinkets. Those are pretty fantastic upgrades over exotics. Ascended armor is also an upgrade over exotic armor, but the difference there is kinda small, and lots of players decide to just stick to exotic armor. Gearing is a massive topic in this game, and I could honestly make an entire video about it. Which I did! A couple of months ago, I actually made this gear guides video, where I talk about what gear you probably should get and all the different ways to get it. The link is in the description, so
Man, Loranity's so good. You know, it's really interesting watching Guild Wars 2 content creators all the time because they have such a specific kind of way of doing things. People have asked me a lot how the Guild Wars 2 community is different than other MMO communities. And people always say things like, oh, they're nice, oh, you know, blah, 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 these kinds of things that you hear a lot that are really, really base level and no one really talks about the deeper sort of thing. There is a certain meta going on across the conversation of Guild Wars 2 that I have never seen inside of any of the other MMOs, where there's all of these spoiler warnings kind of things that people say constantly, where they're like, oh, you know, you can just get on a train and go around and get all of your skill points or your hero points, but you will rob yourself of the challenge of like there's all these like little things that people let you know ahead of time. Dude, in World of Warcraft, nobody would ever say anything like that. They would be like, get carried. Like, that's just what they would tell you. They would, There are methods of being carried that are looked down upon in the World of Warcraft community, like buying WoW tokens. That's a meta thing in the community of World of Warcraft, that like a large chunk of the player base looks down on people who buy gold in that game because they think it's a thing that has ruined the game, even though a lot of people have bought gold in that game once you start digging a little bit deeper. And Guild Wars 2 has their own sort of set of those things. You know, do the storyline in order. Don't worry too much about the in-game stuff. You'll get there when you get there. Take your time and take lots of breaks. That's another one that you hear all the time. Don't use mounts inside of the expansions that didn't have the mounts available to them yet because they're not set up for that. That's another one that you hear a lot. Heart of Thorns gets way more difficult than the rest of the game. That's another one you hear all the time. So like that's the thing that I notice the most about the community, is that they have all of these little things, and a lot of them are more based around kindness and enjoyment of the game, but that's where their meta sits at, and that's where that community meta sits at. Whereas, like I said, World of Warcraft is much more like, get to the end, pump the numbers, big big numbers, big smack, that kind of thing. And RuneScape is a lot more like, we never quit, we just take breaks, we're working towards the longest goal that anyone has ever thought of putting in a video game ever, that sort of thing. It's really interesting playing all of these different games and seeing all the different ways that the community sort of evolve. And I often wonder why that happens, because I don't take part in those things. I don't think, like, I never am the type of person who's giving somebody advice. I feel like I'm like the eternal student, so I'm not ever out here trying to tell people how to do something else. So I'm usually asking the questions instead of giving the answers. But like, I find it really interesting. Like, I wonder how they get to this
Give
point.
it a watch if you're starting your gearing process. I love how today's video is just letting me share all the videos I made this year.
Good job,
Alright,
Lord
so
Andy. That's
story,
incredible.
gliding, mounts, masteries, elite specializations, and gear. Those are the things I highly recommend anyone go for after they hit level 80 for the first time. Now that you have done these, you are ready to transition to the end game. The endgame of Guild Wars 2 is really what you make of it. You can be a tryhard raider, an open world enjoyer, or a PvP main. Again, there is really no wrong way to play this game. But if you are feeling a little bit lost now, here is a list of activities and goals that you can decide to do now that you are level 80, but are by no means necessary. Let's dive in.
See 'em.
The most popular endgame activities in Guild Wars 2 are roughly open world PvE, instance PvE, PvP, and world versus worlds. Open world PvE is something you've probably already done quite a lot.
Yeah.
Lots of endgame players like to run so-called meta events, which are large-scale events with giant bosses and big rewards. Some of these meta events are on a timer, and some of them are just kind of always happening. You can go to the events timer page on the Guild Wars 2 wiki
Been
to
linked to this a billion times.
easily see when the timed events are happening. For example, in just a little bit of time, the Attack on Tara meta event will happen in Auric Basin, which is very popular and very profitable. Look at all these golden chests you get to loot at the end.
That's really cool.
That is some sweet, sweet dopamine. Many commanders also like to do meta trains, where they do one meta after another to make lots of gold very quickly. But of course, meta events are not the only thing that the Guild Wars 2 open world has to offer. Maybe you like to do adventures, hunt achievements, spend hours fishing, or do jumping puzzles. You probably already ran into most of these while leveling to level 80. If you are looking for some cool open world goals to work on, you could consider working on unlocking the flying mounts. The Griffin is the first of these, and it is super fun
What a
to
good
use.
skin.
The Griffin is a bit like a jet plane. If you jump down from somewhere high, you can gain a lot of speed and zoom around the map. It feels so cool to fly around on the Griffin at high speeds, until you fly into a random tree. Maybe that's just me. To get the Griffin, you first gotta finish the Path of Fire story, and then you have to do the Open Skies collection. Make sure to check the wiki for a full guide on this. Doing the Griffin collection will require you to spend about 250 golds. You can easily earn this by running those meta events we were talking about earlier. Getting the Griffin is a solid first endgame goal. The other flying mount is called the Sky Scale.
Yeah,
The
this
Sky Scale
this is
is
where I
not
get confused between the two of these all the
as
time.
fast as the Griffin, but it is arguably the most useful mount in the game. The Sky Scale is more like a helicopter, meaning that you can easily maneuver it to get almost anywhere. It can't fly infinitely, but it's still really useful. Currently,
Has a few
you can unlock
flaps.
the Sky Skill by finishing all of Living World Season 4, and then doing a very long collection achievement. Not much gold is required this time, but the time investment is pretty huge. However, in just a couple of weeks, Guild Wars 2's new expansion is coming out, Secrets of the Obscure. And in this expansion, ArenaNet is adding a new, more streamlined way of unlocking the
I've
Sky
heard
Skill.
about this.
So, if you want to get your Sky Skill more easily, you probably want to check out the Secrets of the Obscure acquisition method instead. Next,
I'm not super drawn to getting mounts currently because open world exploration is just something that's going to happen naturally. Like, I don't have any kind of extreme pull to go and get all of the mounts right off rip, and everybody tells me constantly not to do it, which is fine with me because, like I said, I just don't have that inside of me, that desire to go and get all these mounts. Having a ground mount that takes me around faster, because I use the Warclaw, I think is what it's called, that's totally fine for me currently, and just the ability to move from place to place a little bit quicker is totally enough. I will be glad when I finally get all of them, but that's so far off in the future, I feel like, for me. I mean, we're talking, a year plus of playtime. Although once I get fiber, I sort of have this idea where I'm going to like marathon Guild Wars 2 for a couple of weeks, just over and over and over again, day in and day out. So look forward to that, and maybe I'll like tear down some of that time a little bit. But yeah, I think the things that I'm the most interested in currently are finishing more content to get through more masteries, get further and further into the game to have more possibilities for myself, and then just start picking off things one by one. I'm a scattershot kind of gamer. I don't like to hit one thing and focus on that forever and ever until it's done. I like to slowly work at a whole bunch of things for a long period of time and then have them all complete sort of around the same period of time.
Let's talk about my favorite form of endgame. Instanced PvE. This is stuff like, for example, dungeons.
Yeah.
Guild Wars 2 originally came out with a set of 8 dungeons, each with a story path and also
That one
more
killed us a lot.
profitable explorable paths.
Those spiders, they
Dungeons
poisoned you.
were
We're
quite
doing it with just 2 of us at first.
popular when the game first came out, and they're still pretty fun to run. But ArenaNet doesn't really make dungeons anymore.
Yeah.
Instead,
That's sad,
ArenaNet
man.
made this game mode called Fractals, which is
Shorter
basically the
dungeons.
successor to dungeons. Fractals are smaller 5-man instances, which you can access from the big portal in Lion's Arch. Usually, in a fractal, there are some mobs to kill, a puzzle or 2, and a big boss at the end. Every day, there is a selection of daily and recommended fractals, which will give you loads of rewards. There are 4 different difficulty tiers of fractals, and as you do the fractals, you can climb to the higher difficulty tiers to obtain even better rewards. Fractals are, in my opinion, some of the best content in Guild Wars 2. There is a true sense of progression as you climb to the higher tiers, and they're really great for making goals. They're also, in my opinion, just quite a lot of fun. Because the dailies are different each day, I find that they don't get stale very
How
quickly.
many fractals are there in Guild Wars 2? I've done like 5 fractals at this
If you
point.
like instance
They're good. I've done
content
this
in
one.
other games, definitely give fractals a whirl. Also, time for some more shameless plug. One of my upcoming videos will actually be a guide to getting started with fractals.
Lorraine, you're
Besides
so good at
5-man
promoting
fractals,
yourself
Guild
there.
Wars 2 also offers 10-man raids. These are, as you can probably imagine, large instances filled with difficult boss fights. Raids can be a little bit more tricky to get started with,
Yeah,
because
totally.
you need a group of 10 players and there are also no tiers. There is no smooth learning curve here. However, the Heart of Thorns raids are actually
Bosses
quite
look so
straightforward.
rad.
Power creep over the years has made these raids a lot easier than they used to be. If you want to get started with raids, I also do have a video for that. Definitely give that one a watch. And finally,
This is like the hub world of all of Loranity's videos, dude. I feel like I'm in the Princess Peach's castle with all of the portraits on the wall just being thumbnails for her
we
videos.
also have so-called strike missions. Strike missions are, just like fractals to dungeons, kind
only
of the
one boss,
successor
right?
to raids. Instead of having a large instance with multiple boss encounters, strike missions are instances that consist of one single boss battle.
That's
So
pretty
you
cool,
can go
though.
straight to the boss that you wanna do. Most strike missions are also quite a bit easier than raids, but the newer ones do start ramping up in difficulty. For the players truly seeking a challenge,
I know I wasn't there for Janthier Wild's release, but like I heavily plan on being ready for the next DLC release whenever it comes out, the next X pack, and being ready for that, which I'm assuming will probably be about a year or so away. And I really hope that they put out some new in-game content and that I can experience for the first time with everybody as it comes out. Like strikes feel really interesting to me because it feels like a kind of way to get my feet wet into the idea of raiding without actually doing these big raids where we wipe over and over and over again for 20 minutes while we're trying to learn it and everything. Like it's just one boss. So, you know, the even if you wipe 5-10 times on one boss, it's still just one boss at the end of the day, and then it's over and you know how to beat it after that.
the newer strikes.
You guys find that with MMOs? That's one of my biggest complaints I feel like with MMOs in general is that like the raids take so long to figure out how they're going to work and how all the mechanics are going to play out. And then once you actually beat a boss inside of a raid, I feel like you kind of know how to do that boss over and over again after that. And then there really isn't a whole lot of challenge other than just having other people who also know how to do it and being able to do
Also
it.
have challenge modes, which turn the difficulty up to 11, and they are easily some of the
So see, this
hardest
is the game that I wanna
encounters in the
play.
game right now. Wow, that is a lot of instance PvE game modes. Let me give you some straightforward advice. Fractals are easy to get started with in tier 1, so if you want to do those, just get on LFG, find yourself a group and give them a shot. Everyone in tier 1 is new, so don't worry too much about not knowing everything yet. Then, for 10-man content, start with the normal mode strike missions. If you like those, you can move on to the slightly more difficult Heart of Thorns raids. Then, do the, again, slightly more difficult Path of Fire raids. And then finally,
looks cool,
once
too.
you are
This runs through
truly
Final
up
Fantasy
for a
14.
challenge, give Strike Challenge modes a shot. We have now covered most popular PvE endgame content. Guilders 2, however, has a lot more to offer than just that.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people who barely spend any time playing PvE.
Okay, so she's about to talk about PvP, and I'm really excited to see, especially when she starts talking about like world versus world, because a big thing that I have a confusion with is the idea that like PvP is sort of gated out to new players in a way. Like most of the people who are into PvP have been doing it for a very long time, and getting involved in it now is a really difficult thing to make happen, and that there are sort of like very few people who actually enjoy PvP that aren't already doing it, which I find really interesting because I love the PvP in MMOs. Like I think that that's a really fun thing to do. A lot of times it's a great way to sort of spend an evening just, you know, trying to learn some of the mechanics of it and then being like, that's good for now, and going away and doing something else. But people act like it's the most miserable thing in the world, that they only did it to grind for legendaries and they would never ever do it again. But I don't know. Well, I'm excited to see what she says about it.
Instead, they have decided to main PvP or World versus Worlds. In PvP, teams of usually 5 players face off against each other. The key to being victorious is not just getting kills, it is also capturing objectives and holding them. There is some true strategy needed to be good at PvP. The game mode is very fast paced, easy to pick up, but also incredibly hard to master. If you get truly good at PvP, you will obliterate anyone standing in your way. As someone who is bad at PvP, it is honestly kinda scary how good some people are at
Yeah.
it. You can actually hop straight into PvP right from the start of the game. In PvP, your character gets
PvP is one of those things in video games that looks deceptively more insane than it actually is. And a lot of times the reason that it looks so insane is because people who are above you in skill level can just absolutely annihilate you. I think about it like chess. I don't know if you guys have ever played chess, but chess is about memorizing patterns and understanding the moves that people are going to do and like what system they're trying to run on you, and trying to figure out the counter to that system, and then they'll morph their system into the counter for the counter that you're doing, and then you have to morph your counter into the counter for the counter that they're doing. And that's like the thing that you're running constantly. And as somebody who comes into PvP in a new game right off the rip, and you're not watching any videos or anything, which is kind of a silly thing to do in my opinion, because there's such an insane like meta going on already. You kind of need a little bit of research to get into PvP in most games. Like it looks like magic what people are doing, but the reason that you are being foiled so easily by other players a lot of times is simply because they know what you're going to do before you even do it, because they can recognize based off of just little things that you're doing where you're at inside of this spectrum of skill level with PvP. And so when you step in the ring, they're like, oh, he's a necro, he's running this build, he's this new to PvP, I know he's probably going to try to do this, I'm going to have this ready, he's going to do that, boom, I'm going to stun him, I'm going to get behind him, I'm going to do 2 back attacks, now we're going to stun him again, and then we're going to drop the poison on him, and you just like take the person out really, really quickly that way. And if you were in like, you have this one plan of what you're going to do because it's the only one that you know how to do, and the second that they start foiling that, you fall apart and you can't do anything, and they just melt you down to nothing in the blink of an eye. That happens in World of Warcraft all the time. I remember my first time jumping into PvP with my arms warrior. I was in arenas, and like, dude, I mean, people would just stun lock you to death, but eventually you start to go online and you're like, okay, what's going on here? And you look up all this information about what's happening, and you learn how to do things, and eventually you can be the guy who's stun locking people to death. You know, everyone assumes that everyone who's better than you must be way, 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 way better than you. But a lot of times, actually, people who are better than you are just barely better than you. But it's a hard wall in between you and them. But all you have to do is break on the other side of that wall, and then you can be on even footing with them. And then there's going to be somebody else who's above you, and then over and over and over and over and over again. And yeah, the person way up here does exist, but they're so far and few between compared to like all of the other ones. You know, I mean, it's just like there are not that many legendary top tier, you know, the world knows who they are PvPers. It's just not the way that it is. But there are tons of people who are into PvP.
Guild to max level, and
I would
all your
assume,
gear
at least in
stats
World
are
of Warcraft, that's the way it is.
standardized. That means that gear-wise, you will be on a level playing field with everyone else, even if you haven't farmed up good gear in PvE yet. It can, however, actually be a pretty good way of obtaining said gear. PvP rewards are surprisingly good. You can make goals and also earn yourself the best installed Ascended gear, all without ever setting a foot in PvE. PvP is intense and definitely not for everyone. It's actually by far my least played game mode. But if it is your thing, be prepared to be truly sucked in. But maybe structured 5v5 PvP isn't really your thing. Maybe you are more into large-scale open world battles. If that is you, then the Wolves vs. Wolves game mode is the one for you. In Wolves vs. Wolves, players battle over territory. You can have an epic clash over a castle between two giant armies of players. Or you can end up in an intense 1v1 with someone trying to gank you. It is a very engrossing game mode, and many Guild Wars 2 players consider Wolves vs. Wolves to be their game mode of choice. There is a lot of skill involved in coordinating these large-scale battles, and there are a lot.
This is when I feel like when you hear the phrase Guild Wars, this is what you imagine. That you imagine these giant guild-scale battles. This is so in Mabinogi we did a lot of Guild versus Guild like large-scale battles, and that was one of my favorite things to do inside of that game. And like, you know, the way that Mabinogi sort of worked with that whole thing was that you would have almost like tournament style brackets, and like week to week your guild would go up, and whoever would win that match would move on to the next tier. And that was just such a good time. Like I have such good memories of fighting alongside my fellow guildies against other people, trying to outsmart entire groups of people, and like having all of these plans going on, man, where like you have a guy in the back who's charging up fireball, and you have like a group of people who are trying to lead them into the circle that you're going to cast fireball into to blast everybody. And then once you blast everybody, you have a bunch of people with ice spear at the ready so they can freeze everyone. And then you run up as they freeze them, you go into final hit and you start smacking them like crazy. It's just like there are so many cool things that you can do in coordinated type of situations whenever you're playing these, and being a part of something like that can feel really, really
good.
Of
guilds out there purely focused on getting good at playing together. Just like in PvP, the rewards are actually quite good, but unlike PvP, you use your PvE gear in this game mode. You do get skilled to level 80, but really, I recommend getting yourself at least exotic gear before truly diving in. And that was most major endgame activities in Guild Wars 2.
That's crazy.
If you are new to the game, you might now be wondering, what is the point of doing all of these game modes?
to play the game, dude. Now we can finally play the game, brother. No, man. I mean, like, before, I know that there is an incentive. I know that you unlock shinies and all those things. You get legendaries that you can use across all of your characters and everything. And, like, you have all these achievements and all that stuff. But, like, he's just playing the game, you know? If you enjoy playing the game, you should play it. That's what I tell people about MapleStory all the time is that, like, yeah, man, try it out. It's a really simple game to sort of get into and see if you like it. And if you like MapleStory within the first hour of playing MapleStory, you're going to love MapleStory as you get further and further in because it's way more of that, dude. It's like that on an insane scale, you know? And I feel like Guild Wars 2 is a similar game where, like, if you like Guild Wars 2 within the first 30 hours of playing it, you're going to love Guild Wars 2 long term because it just gets better and better and has more of the same thing, but then, like, spread out into all these new sort of situations. Like, if you enjoy fighting a world boss, you're really going to enjoy doing fractals. And if you enjoy doing fractals, you're probably really going to enjoy doing raids. And if you like doing raids, you're probably going to enjoy doing strikes. And if you like doing strikes and you like working, or sorry, if you like doing strikes and you like working with that many people, you're probably going to enjoy World v World. And then if you like World v World, it's like, well, you know what? PvP is like pretty close to that too. And then you just move
I
through
already
all
called
of it,
my
dude.
really good gear earlier, so what is the incentive to do all of this stuff? Am I just playing for fun,
that
or
sick
is there
halo
some
and those wings,
carrot on a
dude.
stick that will keep me going? While you might be fully geared out in best installed gear, Guild Wars 2 players can always use more gold, because
Yeah,
you can use your
yeah,
gold
true.
to buy cool skins.
Yeah.
We all know that the true endgame goal in MMOs is fashion. All of these endgame activities will earn you gold to fund your fashion addiction. Most people play these game modes because they just like doing them, but the gold you earn is definitely
Bro, imagine actually being a girl playing an MMO. Like imagine being able to have your character be a female woman or female human, like in Guild Wars 2. That's the meta. Being able to be that and have it actually represent who you are as a real person, like that's nuts, dude. That's next level winning for sure. You've got like crazy. If this is what you look like and like you are like that's nuts, dude. Good job for you.
definitely also a motivating factor. If you are truly down to farm some gold, you might also consider going for the ultimate endgame goal, legendary gear. Legendary gear does not have better stats than ascended gear, but it usually looks incredibly cool and
That's
it
so
offers
rad, dude.
amazing quality of life. Like free stat swapping, free transmutation, and using the gear on the multiple characters at once. Legendaries are very expensive, and
Yeah.
farming enough gold for one can easily take you months.
Legendaries were originally pitched to me as being a thing that like I could get within 100 hours. At least that's the way that it sort of was made out to me. Guild Wars 2 players are notorious for this thing. They like to sort of bring you into the game with all these promises that it's going to be this really easy experience, and they hide all of these difficult things to you or the things that are negative about this game in the background until you start to get closer to them, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, those legendaries are like, you know, I'm 1,000 hours in, I don't have a single legendary yet. Like those sort of things come out really quickly once you get further and further into the community.
But once you make your first
But at
legendary,
first they're like, look at
you
how
want
cool, Twilight is, dude. Look at how cool Twilight is, man. Isn't
to
that
make
sick?
more. For a lot of players, including myself, collecting legendaries is the ultimate endgame goal. The carrot on a stick that keeps them logging in every day. All with the ultimate goal to one day be geared in full legendary gear. After 11 years, I am getting pretty close to it myself. And that is our overview of everything you should do after hitting level 80
Good job,
in Guild Wars
Loranity.
2.
Gee whiz,
Thank
man.
you so much for watching. I really hope this video was
I have some ideas for some videos coming up that are like more broadly about MMOs and sort of those kinds of things in general. And like I'm finally compiling all of this footage that I have together to start making videos about all these different games and like talking about them. I can't imagine. I mean, just think about like it is such an investment in your life, like not only to have all of these different like pieces of footage cataloged for making content like this, but to also just like be at the point in these games. Like there is definitely, I say a lot of times that there isn't any clout in being good at video games, but to a degree that's not completely true. Like, you know, people want to listen to somebody who knows what the heck they're talking about a lot of times, or they want to listen to somebody who like they find entertaining and they want to bring them into something that they know that they already know a lot about. But like this takes so much effort and skill and is so difficult to actually be able to do. Like the things that Loranity and like Muckluck and Nox and all those people are doing, are just so unbelievably difficult and time consuming and really really hard, and like 152,000 videos is so minimal for the amount of effort that like this thing actually deserves. So just like absolutely good job for Loranity. Thank you for making this kind of content so that I can come here and watch it and learn about the game that I know nothing about as somebody who's just getting in way later than I should be into this game. Like, just thank you a lot for putting in the time and effort into doing it. It is, I know, a lot of times a thankless job, and like I know, you know what I mean. If Loranity sees this, like you know what I'm saying. Like, I know that it's very very difficult, and I know that like there is no amount of understanding that people can give about like what it is that you do and how much work you put into it. So like, good job, and I appreciate it for sure. Everyone go and like and subscribe to Loranity if you haven't already. This video is really really good. I'm so excited to get back to Guild Wars 2. I've been playing a ton of Maple Story, and I'm ready to get back in, dude. So I will see you guys on the next one. Everyone be safe out there, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.